Guys, the big man's about to have a heart attack because I've just spent half an hour, 13 of which I was live streaming, and then I realised that you weren't there because the comments weren't happening. And then I spent the further 17 minutes where I've live streamed hundreds of times now. Every single time I do the same thing, and I did the same thing, and it didn't work because technology's a bitch. So here we are. I won't give you the whole intro and all the bollocks. Let's just start talking FPL. I'm joined by Jian, who has been the most patient man in the world and deserves a medal. He has sat around for half an hour and watched me have a meltdown and kept me half sane throughout it and helped. What happened, Vladimir? Simply, there is no explanation. Technology didn't work as it has worked hundreds of times before because that's what technology does to drive people insane. Anyway, Jian, welcome. Thank you for being here. There's loads to talk about. Let's just start talking about FPL because my head's beat. I'm wrecked. How did your game week go?
Yeah, so my game week was decent. All things considering, it was decent. So I didn't sell Reece James, which I was happy about, and I got Andreas Pereira's points off the bench for that. Nice 6 points. I also didn't captain Haaland. I captained Salah, and that blow was majorly cushioned by the shoulder assist right at the end. So all in all, 82 points, and I'm quite happy with it considering I didn't captain Haaland and I didn't take out Reece James.
Yeah, looking at your team now on the screen, 76 with Andreas off the bench is 82. You did well not to end up having Nico Williams first on the bench. The -1 pointer, but why would you at the end of the day in that 6-0 sort of Man City game, which obviously benefited us all with Haaland, some more than others. I was very much the same as you. I got 75 points in the end, so 7 off you. Cancelo was brilliant. Martinelli brilliant. Salah again cushioned the blow with that shoulder assist at the last kick of the game. And then Haaland, I'm just glad I have him. I mean, I know pretty much all of us do now, but imagine you didn't. My transfers for the week were Rodrigo in, so that's a shame. And I brought in Stupinian for Reece James. He was only on the bench. I just wanted to make the moves. I wasn't sure about rotation, whatever else. I probably could have held off, but ultimately I needed the funds from James down to Stupinian to fund the Rodrigo upgrade from Leon Bailey. So the decision was right. The outcome's the outcome, and we look forward to next week. Tomorrow I'm going to talk through all my plans with Big Man Bakar. We're streaming tomorrow night on time, believe it or not. I'll do rigorous tests tomorrow. But Jim, what's your plan with this team for next week? Have you any transfers in the bank, or what's the story?
Yeah, so as it's tied with the stream, Rodrigo replacement. So I'm looking to take him out. There's no real other fires I've got in my team at the moment. Team's quite balanced and well set. So I'm going to be taking him out. The player I like most is the one that John Scott's mentioned in the chat, Morgan Gibbs-White. I'm really, really bullish on him. I think he's got 3 great fixtures, and then another 3 with the average one sandwiched in the middle. I think he's got a high ceiling. And from what I've seen of him on the eye test so far, I'm really impressed. I think he's only amassed 7 points so far in terms of FPL, but he looks really good. He's very direct. He's positionally really good. He gets in between the lines and pins both centre backs when he drives. Like we said, he's direct. And the thing is, against Spurs and City, I was very impressed because City and Spurs are very difficult teams to dominate, right? One has 3 centre backs and 2 holding midfielders in front of them. One is Manchester City, probably the best team in the world day in, day out. But he still managed to get on the ball and cause them a few problems here and there. And I think with that, there's goals coming, and I'm very optimistic about him.
Yeah, the fixtures are great. It's kind of got me in this position now with, if I just go back to my team momentarily, where, Robertson's been letting me down. I need to find a Rodrigo replacement. I could take a -4 and go Robertson and Rodrigo to Luis Diaz, and I could bring in Nico Williams. And I know Nico Williams isn't Morgan Gibbs-White, but it comes back to that whole conversation around their fixtures. And looking ahead to the next couple, Bournemouth this weekend, obviously a humongous fixture to target. Get a couple of games out of them, and then probably wildcard in game week 8 is my plan. Is kind of what I'm looking at. And it's kind of hard now because I'm sitting weighing up. Robertson does have Everton. I could just go make a sideways switch from Rodrigo, and maybe that's the best call, just looking at overall points over the next couple of weeks. And it's something I'm really going to sit and think about And I didn't pull the trigger last night or anything on transfers based on values. I'm happy to kind of sit and wait closer to the deadline. But yeah, I don't know. I'm tempted with a Rodrigo sideways switch to like an Aronson. I don't
Well,
know, or even
yeah,
like a
I'd prefer.
Sinistera or someone at Leeds because they've got great fixtures too.
Yeah, I'd prefer holding Robbo and doing essentially a sideways switch in that instance because I don't really see the merit in taking out Robertson. Whilst he hasn't looked great, um, and like you said earlier, there's a lot of reasons to doubt him in the sense that he's been taken off early. Chimikas has come on, and that kind of shows Klopp doesn't have as much faith in him to get an attacking return. And if he doesn't, then we shouldn't either. But Everton will probably sit back in a very, very solid formation, and I think because of that, you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt for the game and try and bank that clean sheet with him. Then it also means you don't take a hit. I'm quite hit adverse at the moment. And then talking about those Leeds option, I really like two specifically, which are Aronson and Sinestra. Marsh is very complimentary about both, especially the latter. And he obviously got his debut goal in the Premier League, which was really good for him. So I'm positive about both of them.
Having a look at the XGI numbers and different numbers here, and I know these, maybe I should set this to per 90. I'll set it to per 90 because obviously Sinistera hasn't played maybe as much. But the XGI, it's Rodrigo out in top with 53%. Then we've got Harrison at 42. He's 6.1 million though, and then Aronson 5.5 million coming in with a 17%. If we look at XA, Harrison does massively outperform Aronson by almost 3x. Did I call him Aronson? It's Aronson. And then XG wise, Harrison and Aronson are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where I'd be tempted to save a bit of cash and go Aronson. We know as well, like, we had that unlucky goal earlier in the season. It wasn't a goal, it was an own goal and whatever else. And it's 5.5 million. And I think if I was to take that sideways move, I could do any of them, to be honest with you. But it just might be nice to have $1 million in the bank. Let Robertson play against Everton. It'll be a fiery encounter. Robertson's a fiery player. I think Everton might struggle to score, even though Liverpool haven't been great. And then from there, of options again. And I think having options, not taking hits is always beneficial because ultimately I need to think of it like I could get Nico Williams in for Bournemouth, which is great. And I think he might be a duo haul. His XGI is the best of any defender in the league. And I'm just so broken about it. Like everyone is, I think. It's the kind of -4 or not. It's that ultimate debate. I am very hit adverse, like.
Well, you brought up Neco Williams, and I really like him. So I was talking about this earlier on Twitter, and I think he's going to be a really integral player, whether you start him or not throughout your season. Because what he does is, when he has a good fixture, he is someone who, at that price, is going to give you such a high ceiling. Like you said, he tops XGI for the whole league, right? And Forest look good. Forest look good when they're at home, and they're counter-pressing high. Obviously, against City and Spurs, it's slightly different with the quality of their attacks, but they're not going to be playing them every week. I think with Williams certainly being able to pick up a big haul here and there, and you only have to really play him in the games where he has the best fixtures because your squad will be structured around him. I think he's definitely one to have, and it's almost turning the template a little bit. Whereas 5 at the back was optimal at the start, I think 4 at the back is now becoming more optimal, and as we'll come on to, whether it's 4-4-2 or 4-3-3.
I'm just having a tinker and a wee play here with the Opta stats on Fantasy Football Hub. I'll try pop these up on the screen. I don't know how small they'll be, so sorry to anyone at home trying to read these. But it's just here to show you kind of 4 big defenders. I'll throw Cancelo in there as well, I suppose, just because everyone has him, and I'll maybe throw in Cucurella. And then you can't see these, Jian, but I've basically pulled up the Nico Williams, James, Alexander-Arnold, Perisic, Cucurella, and Cancelo. Maybe there's one I'm missing, Robertson probably. I'll throw in Robbo, and then I think we're about there in terms of kind of highly owned fullbacks. So when we look at these again, as you can see there, Nico Williams the highest XGI. In terms of XA, he's 4th of that list of really big names. In terms of XA so far this season, he is behind Trent, James, and Perisic, but he's above Cucurella, Robertson, and Cancelo, who all have much higher price tags. In terms of XG, he's actually top in the list, which is kind of obscene. And when you partner that up with the Bournemouth fixture and a 4.1 million price tag, I'm almost tempted myself here again to just go and take a 4-point hit and bring him in for for Robbo. Like that's 2.7 million in the bank, and he's got higher XG.
Yeah. I think the one thing you've got with him is that because he has 3 good fixtures, sandwiched in with a slightly more difficult one, which I can't exactly remember what it is, and then 3 after that, maybe just leaving Robbo for 1 week and you still can get great value out of that transfer next one because you're not really missing the train.
I think I've seen a question there. Start Nico over Perisic.
100%.
I'll tell you, yeah, I think my main point here is whatever, make Perisic a separate decision with another player. Nico Williams has to play this weekend. So not even Nico or Perisic. Nico has to play. He has to play.
Yeah.
He has to play. He's topping XGs and XDays and XGIs and X whatevers. And he's
I mean,
playing
if you're not going to
Bournemouth.
play him, if you're not going to play him this week, then you'll never play him because it is Bournemouth at home. It is probably the best fixture. In terms of Perisic, I think the fact that he started the game away at Forest, got about 67 minutes, and then the key being that he started the game away at West Ham, and don't get me wrong, he's looked very, very good. I've been very impressed by him. The fact that he completed 90 minutes kind of suggests to me that he'll probably get a rest and Sessegnon will come into the side. And you don't really want him to come on for a 1-point cameo when you've got someone who can genuinely return you 15 points this week.
So the topics I had, we had Rodrigo replacements. Have we kind of covered all them? You mentioned Morgan Gibbs-White. I mentioned the Leeds lads. You know, there's the upgrade to the likes of the Diaz's or whatever else if people can find the cash. Is there anyone else we've missed there?
Probably Pascal Gross. I think maybe less.
I have him, so he didn't even come into my mind.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I don't think many people have considered him as much this week because they thought about him in past weeks and they've already got him in. But I think he's certainly a good option. Brighton look good and obviously good fixtures.
Yeah. Pascal Gross has looked amazing. Very, very advanced. So
yeah, 100%.
I like that. The next topic I wanted to talk about was just captaincy in general. We've already touched on the fact that we kind of got away with one with Salah. I think a lot of people were all about, Erling Haaland. The reason I didn't pick Haaland as my captain, I mean, the logic, I think it was sound. Other people might not. My logic was that, he could have been rotated. And he could have. Like, the risk was there. The risk paid off for people who captained him. But we've seen Kevin De Bruyne dropped. He was just dropped. So does that mean that, De Bruyne starts this weekend, Haaland more likely to be dropped? Or, whatever about this weekend coming, we'll talk about that. But last week, I don't know. I think people who captain Salah, people who captain Haaland, it's just the game. I think the decision, in my head, it wasn't such a 70-30 or 80-20 call where it's like, obviously it's Haaland. I think it was very much a kind of 55-45 and 60-40 at best, maybe. But, I don't think anyone who's captain Salah should feel bad, and we all got away with one. So, if anything, I think we should feel good.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, for me, I captain Salah as well. My concern with Haaland was that he's going to play 65 to 75 minutes. Now, I expected him to start because I think, given their schedule, it's slightly better for him to rest the Villa fixture. So, I think he's not actually a great captain option for this week. But yeah, I think he was going to play anywhere between 65 to 75, and I was convinced Salah would get 90. And I think when I took the expected minutes into account, I kind of leaned towards going Salah. But obviously now, it didn't pay out. But like you said, we got away with it. Only a 7-point difference if you have both in the side.
I've seen a take there in the comments that I just disagree with about Pascal Gross. Yeah, I mean, he's Leicester, Bournemouth, Palace in his next 3. He's 4th in the whole league for XA. In terms of midfielders, that is. He's sort of top 10 in terms of XG. He's been scoring well. Why can't he continue?
Yeah, no, I think he's a good option. I think I maybe understand Edward's point. I'm not sure exactly where he's coming from, but maybe he expects Brian to slightly drop off. Maybe he thinks because he hasn't seen it before from Pascal Gross, it's unsustainable. But I think before in previous seasons, Pascal Gross was playing in such a different role. He was playing in a wider role, maybe as a wing back. But here he's far more advanced. He's far more central. He's attacking the half spaces. And I think as such, things will change and he's going to do well.
Yeah, I think he can do well for another bit. I think he's a couple of nice fixtures there. Josh in the comments, I absolutely love this. John, it's my birthday today. Man United have won, so I'm amazingly happy. And I just got back from a rave. Who comes back from a rave at this time? Maybe you live in another country. My days, it's been great. By the way, who's your captain for this week? I will probably be captaining. It's not going to be Haaland. It's Mo Salah against Everton.
Yeah, same. There's also a couple people in the chat talking about Haaland's predicted minutes. I think in terms of that, they've obviously got Spurs and Sevilla coming up, right? And one thing which the Athletic reported in Haaland's contract was that his minutes will be managed well. I know Pep took him off around that 68th minute mark, but do you really want him starting a game every 3 days for the next 4 or 5 games? Probably not. So I think he's going to be benched. So I think maybe he comes on for about 20 minutes if they need him. But that's my take on his expected minutes.
With Haaland's incredible Champions League, holy shit, I cramped. I just cramped. I played football earlier and big man's cramping here with a lactic. Oh God, this night couldn't get worse. So I'm here spending time with you, Jane. It couldn't get worse. No, I'm just talking about the technical issues. So what was I even talking about? Yes, Haaland. His Champions League record is obscene. I think he wants to continue that. I think he wants to try and break records over the course of a career, and that doesn't happen if you play against Villa at a weekend to miss out in the Champions League next week. So I think it is a case of this weekend we see him for a 20-30 minute cameo to keep the legs going, and he goes and smashes in the Champions League next week. Whatever about actual predicted minutes and who's pulling these numbers out of where and how they're pulling them, I think we can all agree, based on all the comments, based on everything else, there is a high chance that Haaland is rotated this weekend. So is the best play from a gameplay standpoint to captain him? I don't think it is.
Yeah, someone in the chat just mentioned, why don't you captain Haaland and vice captain Salah? And our reasoning is essentially that if he comes on off the bench because we think he's going to be rotated, there's a strong possibility that he only gets 1 point, and that's not what you want when you got Salah away at Everton.
And people's immediate retort to that will be, but he got a hat-trick in whatever minutes. He can get another 2 goals in 20 minutes if he comes on, and that's fine. But it's a numbers game. You know, it's a case of, do you want Salah for 90 or do you want Haaland for a probable 20 or 30? Might get more. He might get a full half. Who knows? And that's your call, and that's the beauty of this game. If we all did the same thing, it'd be an awful boring game, wouldn't it? So, I see Sterling mentioned in the comments here.
Yeah, I like him.
Sterling, he surprised me. I genuinely thought he'd flop. I thought that would be another Chelsea signing. I heard deadline day's happening now.
Yeah, we signed so I'm a Chelsea fan myself, and we have brought in Aubameyang, and we've also brought in Zakaria. Zakaria from Russia. He is incredible, by the way. Okay.
But like, he really is shit hot. He's so good. Like, that's a top signing. It's just a bit dodgy, the whole Russia bit. I thought there was no dealings going on there.
I'll be honest with you. I've heard of him, but I haven't really watched him play before. So I'll take your word for it, and I'm happy that he's good.
I'll put it to you this way: like, he is. I play another game called So Rare, right? And in terms of prospects, in terms of like up and coming prospects, he's in the same conversations as the Cody Gakpos and the Anthonys. It's just that he's Russian. He's a bit further removed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a bit further removed from the spotlight. But I've seen also big links to Memphis Depay.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Those kind of started going around, I saw on Twitter maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they're getting stronger and stronger. It'd be weird if we took both Depay and Aubameyang, but we'll see what happens. I think Aubameyang could be an interesting option. But going back to the comment about Sterling, he's obviously now scored a brace.
People are laughing. I thought you meant Zakarian. You meant Zakaria.
Like I said, I haven't really watched him play before, but I just know he's no,
I thought you signed that little Russian kid, and I was like, geez, that's a real... Because I did see him linked to England. I did see that. Anyway, Zakaria, okay, not quite as exciting, but yeah, probably more prudent. Anyway, back to Sterling.
Yeah, so obviously he scored a brace against Leicester, and then he scored against Southampton, right? And I think even in the games where he didn't score beforehand, like Leeds, he was getting himself in good positions, and he looked far more threatening than both Mount and Havertz, right? And I think if anyone's going to get the goals for Chelsea in that side, it's going to be him. He's done it at City. He had an incredible record, even with his minutes managed. So I think he's, out of all of them, he could be a real good differential because he's slightly cheaper than the big premiums.
The problem is fitting him in, isn't it? It's the same with so many players.
Yeah.
We have such a, not pricey template, but we have such a template there in front of us. And, you know, aside from the big at the back bit that people could argue has paid off or hasn't paid off, I think it has in terms of points per million. But
yeah, it has.
If we look at the rest of the team, you know, Jesus and Haaland are almost non-negotiable. And then you've got Salah. You've probably got a Martinelli. And I'm probably missing one other. the other stuff. But
Salah, Martinelli, he's been good.
yeah,
Gross has obviously been
Gross is
good.
there, but I mean, people have like a Gross or a Zaha or a someone,
Yeah,
or maybe they have a Mitrovic, or maybe they've a. But
just
the
an 8
point,
million spot in general.
the point, Luis Diaz, whatever. The point is trying to fit Sterling in is tough because you probably have to bring a premium defender all the way back down. But as we've seen, maybe Nico Williams can fill that hole, and then or you need to like get rid of Salah. It's
Yeah,
hard, is what I'm saying, and that's why
yeah.
the ownership's so low. Like the game is, it's just not optimal for me to be doing to be trying to get Sterling in. I think, but I respect everyone who has him because I say that, but the man scored like 23 points in the last 2 weeks. What's not optimal about that?
I think there will be a way coming up soon, and that's going to be taking out Jesus. I think when they get to game week 9-ish, and they've got, I think, Spurs, Liverpool, and City in 4 weeks, I think you can probably afford to take him out. Maybe rejiggle the squad a little bit and get Sterling in somehow.
Yeah, you could be right there because a lot of people be wild carding an 8. Let him play Brentford, get him out for the Spurs, Liverpool, Leeds, Man City run. Maybe get rid of the Jesus there and try and wangle things. Higher Sterling's fixtures around that period though. Yeah, he goes on a run then of Palace, Wolves, Villa, Brentford. So we'll see how he pans out over the next couple of weeks. But I think wildcard territory will be fun because I think there are a lot of interesting options. And speaking of those interesting options, a lot of people are mentioning the likes of Mitrovic now. There's Isaac. There's Tony. There's a lot of these kind of 7-8 million, 6.5 to 7.5 million forwards who don't have a space again because of that rigid structure I mentioned. The Haaland, the Jesus, the Salah, the Martinelli, the big at the back. But whenever wildcard time comes, maybe people will tear up the script a bit. Are there any of those forwards kind of interesting you?
Yeah, I actually really like all of them. I was talking about them today on Twitter. First and foremost, I think Mitrovic is going to be the best one, right? I think he is just the definition of talisman theory. Everything goes through him. A lot of stuff goes through Tony, but everything goes through Mitrovic, essentially, when it comes to goal scoring. That I think regardless of who they play, they've always got a good chance. They've got Spurs and Chelsea in the next 2. Now, I think if you're going to bring him in, I honestly don't think they're that bad fixtures. Chelsea obviously lost to Southampton on. We don't look too secure at the back. I think Spurs got slightly fortunate to only concede 1 against West Ham and none against Forest. Actually, very fortunate. I think easily a couple more. And I think Mitrovic could have them in both. And then not only that, but then you avoid the price rises for the sea of green afterwards. So I like him. I like Isaac. I've only watched a brief bit of him, but I was very impressed yesterday. I thought his runs in the channel were good. I thought the way he got in behind, I thought his movement was very good, which was not talked about too much. So I like him. And then obviously Ivan Toney, we all know what he's about at Brentford. Good fixture run, talisman, penalties, guaranteed 90 minutes. So I think, he's definitely a good option as well.
Yeah, I think Isaac played a great game. He really announced himself to the Premier League there. That second goal was beautiful, unfortunately just offside. But I think I'd like to see a bit more from him over a couple of weeks to see that consistency. But very, very interesting option who's just been kind of thrown in. Anthony is a big signing for United, but again, I think he's coming at 7.5 million.
Yeah,
probably in around that kind of Sancho price where you're kind of going to have to decide between a bunch of them. So he's not an option really straight off the bat. Be interesting to see who else comes out. Like Aubameyang, I wonder what price they make him. He used to be super premium, then he went to 10, or was it 10 and he flopped at Arsenal in midfield. Remember, everyone was excited. And then maybe 9.5, do you think?
Yeah, I think 9.5. One thing someone did bring up in the chat, Luca, he talked about Nunes, and I will add him to that list of players I like in the forward line. That's why I think you're going to kind of have to take Jesus out in 9 because there's so many players with great fixtures. I know Nunes isn't one of them because Liverpool's fixture swing, but in the short term, I like him. I think a lot of things go through him when he plays. Liverpool kind of changed their setup. Not the same as City where it's like a lot more Haaland focused, but a lot of things do go through Nunes. Diaz goes a lot wider, so I think he's going to be a good option as well.
My worry with Darwin, and again, I haven't read or listened to pressers from Klopp. Maybe Klopp's been very clear about Nunez coming straight back in or whatever, but in my head, Firmino has looked so good. Like, so good. Mm. I mean, I don't know how to do this. I keep saying this every week. If you take out who the players are and their age or anything, if you just looked at what they've done on the pitch so far this season, I don't know. Firmino's looked like probably the best player at Liverpool. One of them, Harvey Elliott's looked insane. There's different guys that have done at nice moments of brilliance, but Firmino has really looked incredible. And I just think it's so hard to take him out. And I know Darwin Núñez is this new big guy, the XG he got in his first couple of games and the goals and this and that. And I get it all. I just wonder, has Firmino kind of stamped his authority down a little bit and kind of said to Klopp, like, look, I'm still here and I'm still shit hot. Not that Klopp didn't know that, but I just wonder, like, Champions League, all the rest, is there a chance for a bit of rotation there? Or
Yeah,
even
there probably will be.
65-minute appearances and this sort of stuff that you don't want to see?
Yeah, there probably will be a bit of rotation. The one thing I reference is the Man United game, which Liverpool lost. Now, overall, they weren't great, right? But Firmino specifically, I thought had a really poor game that one. And I just wonder. Obviously, he's done very well against Bournemouth and scored against Newcastle. But I just wonder if he's kind of lost it a little bit. And in those type of games where you need a bit more quality now, it's kind of Núñez's time. Because we weren't really considering any Firmino starts before the headbutt against Palace. So I think maybe give it a few weeks and that'll kind of settle down and Núñez will be first choice.
I'm laughing here looking at the comments. Shout out to everyone here. Luke, I see you. Nick, Panic. I like it. Edward, Moaldo. There's loads of yous there. Thank you for being here. Andrew Wise in the house. Luke Trent coming in with the Russia ? He's obviously 10 minutes behind. Whenever you say Zakaria and I say Zakarian and it sounds like the same thing and I start talking about this young kid from Russia and everyone's like, he's not Russian, he's Austrian or Swiss or whatever he is. I always mix up Austria and Switzerland because they're both like Central European with like red and white flags. I always mix them up. Yes, okay, so we've covered a lot of things. One of the things that happened this week was very close to the deadline. Lots of reports coming out on Twitter of Reece James missing trainings, of Reece James not travelling to hotels, selfies with players saying he wasn't there, all sorts of stuff from the community. And Reece James was ill. Should be back into the squad pretty quick, but a lot of us got rid of him. You could say we knee-jerked a bit, but I just think I kind of didn't like the double exposure to Chelsea's defence personally, so I was kind of happy. But speaking of... He's one of the fullbacks that kind of happened, whatever else. We can talk about that. But another one I want to throw out there is Robertson just being overall disappointing so far from a numbers, from an eye test, from a Liverpool's form perspective. A lot of people looking to get rid of Robertson and redistribute cash and probably try and go to Diaz. What are your thoughts on the kind of those two fullbacks? And
I'll start with the easier one, and that's Reece James. I think it was a mistake in general for people to take him out. I think even if you take him out for someone like a Ruben Diaz who got a 6-pointer this week, I still think you probably should have held Diaz. Reece. The reason being is you're going to want him back, right? His ceiling is so high. You miss him for one game, he can kill you. And the fixture run is so good coming up for Chelsea. Obviously, they've got Liverpool in there, but apart from that, it's a sea of green on the FPL FDR. So I really like him, and I think at 6 million he's just gold dust. So I would be getting him back in and finding ways to get him back in, and sell him under pretty much no circumstances. I think with Fofana coming in as well, you won't have to play right centre back as much. I think with us not scoring goals, I'm a Chelsea fan, so with us not scoring goals, he'll go to right wing back more because we simply need him there. So I think everything points to getting back in. Now with Robertson, slightly more difficult. He's underperformed and he hasn't, like in terms of FPL, but he hasn't looked too good in terms of a footballing sense. He's obviously been hooked early for Chimikas for a few games now, and that kind of shows where Klopp's at with him, right? So that's not great. The only thing is, I think it's very team dependent. I think if you have to take him out for a hit, then leave it. If you can take him out otherwise, and there's no other fires, then yeah, sure, take him out. But Everton away isn't the worst fixture, so I'll probably hold him for one more.
I got to throw this out there. Now, they have Arsenal this week, but I've just seen someone in the comments saying double up on United defence. 2 clean sheets in a row.
Yeah, I'm going to go check the fixtures very quickly.
Yeah, their fixtures aren't incredible. Arsenal and Palace and Leeds, which are all right, but still, both those teams can score. City is a killer. And then you have Everton, Newcastle, Spurs and Chelsea. The fixtures aren't great. The only time this season they've kind of an extended run of decent fixtures is, I think everyone will probably be targeting them around Gameweek 14-15, where they go on a run of West Ham, Villa, and then you've got Fulham, Forest, Wolves, and Bournemouth. I think that's 16-19, which is a long way away.
Yeah.
Interrupted by the World Cup as well, which is a bit of another spanner in the works.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe even coming back from that World Cup, whatever else happens, it's just, I don't know, maybe then, I don't know. United are just too all over the place. They've too many options who could rotate further up the pitch. The guys who aren't going to rotate are probably a bit pricey because of like historical biases, like Bruno. I don't know. I just don't like it. I just don't like it.
Yeah, no, same. I don't think you can justify it. The reason being is because what's the longest period you want to hold him for? You wouldn't want your asset to be playing against Arsenal, right? They won 5 out of 5. They look really good going forward, if anything, with Martinelli and Jesus and Odegaard specifically. Saka's been a little bit off it this season, but still decent nonetheless. Then Palace away is not an easy fixture, right? Selhurst Park's always been traditionally a very difficult ground to go to, and Zaha's in great form. Leeds again in decent form, and then you've got City, right? And then yes, you have Everton, but then after that you have Newcastle who look really good, Chelsea and Tottenham. I just don't think there's any real space there for you to bring them in. I think you should probably avoid all of them at the moment.
I just want to throw out the Spurs lads. Now, a lot of us maybe don't have them, and people who do, who've persisted with Son somehow, or have Kane, and Kane has been ticking along nicely, to be fair to him. They have Fulham this week. It looks like a good fixture. It might feel hard for people to kind of justify Kane to Haaland this week. They're probably FOMOing off the back of 6 goals in 2 games, and rightly so. They've lost a bit of value. Haaland's gained a bit of value. They're sat there with Kane and they're thinking, I need to get to Haaland. But as we spoke about, Haaland might get 20 or 30 minutes this week. Kane, you imagine, will be a 90-minute man playing against Fulham. So it begs the question, while it's a case almost of get Haaland in at all costs, if you've Kane, is it? Or do you give him another week because he's been ticking along?
I think if you're in both camps, you hold. I think with the value you kind of have tied up in Haaland now, and even if he's going to be benched this week, you're going to want him straight back, right? So there's no real point selling for 1 week and then having to go back. There's 2 transfers, and you never know what could happen anyway. But I think if you're Kane, you hold. The reason being is, like we said, we think Haaland's going to be benched. I think that's general consensus, and it's quite logical as well. And like you said, it's a pretty good fixture, Fulham at home. Kane's look relatively sharp. I know Spurs haven't been scoring a bucket load of goals, but when anything's been happening, it's kind of been happening through him and not really Son. So I think this week, if you're in both camps, you hold. And Kane certainly got a good opportunity to pick up points. I feel sorry for his owners because he's been doing pretty well. It's just Haaland's just set the world on fire at the moment.
Yeah, he's been obscene. Do you know the funny thing? Here's a little inside scoop for everyone watching. I spent like an hour and probably just over an hour prepping a video in pre-season of why you shouldn't own Haaland. I sat and I went in about the Bundesliga drop-off, dug up loads of stats on so many players on Haaland, looked at his injury history, looked at Man City's style of play, looked at Borussia Dortmund, looked at this, looked at that, and I was about to post it. It was due to go out at like 12 o'clock and it was 11 o'clock, and I just said, my mind's been changed. It was after the Liverpool Community Shield game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I was like, I want him. I can't put this video out. I'd recorded it, edited, whole process. The thing was like edited, ready to go, all in. You're probably talking 4 hours of work, and I was like, nah. And it was the best decision I've ever made. Can you imagine that was still there? Oh,
that would have been a bad receipt for people to go back to. Smart decision to not do it though after that work. Required. I respect that.
Yeah, it was one of those that I was just like I could put this out, but ultimately my opinions changed. And when I go and have Haaland in game week 1 and I'm saying don't own him, nah. One to bring up here is Ramsdale. I've seen a few sort of questions about Ramsdale updates. Rashford replacements is, you can just take our Rodrigo replacements as the same conversation, but Ramsdale, in terms of updates, the latest I'm finding there on Google, maybe I'll check Premier Injuries there from Ben Dinnery, but apparently he'd be assessed.
I think whoever brought that up in the chat, thanks for that, because it's a really interesting talking point. Essentially with Ramsdale, it's something I was reading today as well. His save points since the start of the year, the calendar year almost, have been quite different. He's not racking up the same amount of saves just because of Arsenal have got a lot better essentially. They've got a lot better essentially. So because of their players, they don't face as many shots, the system. And with him at 5 million, do you really want to spend that extra 0.4, 0.5 on a goalkeeper when you can get someone who's cheaper, has good fixtures, and has a higher ceiling now? Because he hasn't really set the world on fire with those 12-point hauls anymore, or even 8 or 9. So I think essentially he's one to get off. Probably not the worst thing in your team, but one to get off for sure.
Yeah, it's one like where I'm looking at my team now, okay, and while again I don't think I've enough changes that really need made, I'm looking at it and I've got Ramsdale, who I'm meh. I've got Robertson, and I'm like, where? Rodrigo, where? Archer doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, Estupinian. I mean, that's 0.5 million or 0.4 million if he was a Nico Williams. There's 4 or 5 moves I think I would make in an ideal world. But when I pull up my team for next week, it looks okay. Do you know, it actually doesn't look that bad. Ramsdale, late fitness test, might play. But if he doesn't, at least have Ward coming in. But then even that's one of those where Ward's coming in and I've got Pascal Gross and Estupinian, and I hate having the kind of contradictory players. I like to almost stack nice. So I don't like that because you never really know what to cheer, and the upside is massively capped. So I think Rodrigo's the obvious thing that needs sorted. But equally, Robertson would be nice to take some cash back from. Ramsdale is a problem, and it's like, but I think the smart move is to hold on for another week or two. Otherwise, I'll pop my load now, and then in 2 weeks, everyone will be popping their wild card with 2 weeks more information than me, and I'll be like, I can't believe I didn't get X. Do you know?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's the reason I'm kind of talking about it very self-indulgently is like, I've no doubt there's a lot of people thinking the same sort of thing who've like 2, 3, maybe 3, 4 things they're like, ugh, and they want to hit the wild card. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think if your team actually looks okay for one more game week, information is the most valuable thing in the game, and if you can buy yourself 2 weeks of information, I just think it's probably a move.
Yeah, I'm quite strong on my perspective of this, that this isn't the best week to wildcard. I think there's quite limited upside because of the fixture swings that are about to happen. I think you're almost limiting yourself to locking in moves for the next 2-3 weeks, and that's probably not what you want to do in a wildcard. When you wildcard, you want a team who are ready to go for an extended period of time, and maybe around the fringe, you've got a few players you're looking at playing very aggressively with. I know a few of the guys who have done very well this season have basically just moved around the 8 million spots and kept the rest of the structure the same. And I think using a wildcard in that domain is probably better than using it now when you have to kind of change it up too much.
Can I throw out one more kind of wildcard topic? It's not actually a wildcard related topic. It's just wildcard in terms of the conversation we're having. Arsenal and their form is insane, right? And we have our Martinellis and we have our Gabriel Jesuses and people have their Salibas and we're all having fun. But Zinchenko's injured, Partey's injured, Ramsdale could be injured, Odegaard could be injured. That's 4 really key players.
Yeah, Partey's the big one.
That's 4 key players. You know, you're saying Partey's the key one, and I agree, but Ramsdale has been a good goalkeeper. Just to show how important Partey's been then. You know, how important they've all been. Odegaard's bagged something like 3 goals in the last 2 or 3 games. Yeah. And he's just bossing that midfield, and he's their captain. And then Zinchenko, when he came in, whatever about how good he looked in the first couple of games before he got injured, it's like, could this kind of all, I don't know, derail? Fall down?
Yeah, I mean, I can see the perspective as to why people would think that. With Spurs, Liverpool, City, I believe it is, in 3 out of 4 game weeks, then that's probably the perfect time to do derail if you want to do any, if there was ever a time. What I would say is, though, is they seem a little bit different this year. I think they seem very close as a group, and the mentality is very good. With Odegaard, you've got a good replacement with Smith Rowe. I'm not sure how fit he exactly is, and I don't think he's as good as Odegaard is currently, but still a good replacement. Arsenal seem to cope relatively well against Villa without Partey, even though I think he's one of their most important players. They still looked a very solid outfit. So I think the United game will be a really good test to put that theory to the test, essentially, and see how they cope against a slightly better team. No disrespect to Villa, but they're not in the best of form at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I probably wouldn't care as much or kind of stick the tinfoil hat on or start trying to predict the future. But we all have Arsenal triple ups.
Yeah,
pretty much all of us have that. So it's like, it's maybe something we need to start thinking about. Albeit wild card a couple of weeks away and an Arsenal fixture swing, I think. So, you know, at that stage, maybe if the form does downturn over the next couple of weeks, the game could look very differently in a few weeks.
Yeah, but, I'm sure it will.
Jian, is there anything else you wanted to cover?
One thing I'd like to reiterate maybe is Morgan Gibbs White. I'm probably putting my neck on the line with that bandwagon, but I think
triple captain.
There was, you know what, you talk about the captaincy, and as crazy as it sounds, and I wouldn't say I'm definitely not a passive player, but I'm not like the most aggressive player in the world, right? I'm somewhere in the middle, probably slightly more to the aggressive side. But I genuinely was seriously considering captaining Morgan Gibbs White this week. That's how bullish I was. Because I don't think there's too many good options this week in general, apart from De Bruyne, Salah, and Kane, right? And I don't own De Bruyne or Kane. So I will go Salah, but I'm really bullish for Morgan Gibbs White this week.
But I rate that because if the numbers are pointing there, if the fixtures pointing there, if the form's pointing there, and whatever else, like what's the worst that can happen? Another Haaland hat trick is probably what's going to happen, but I'm not going to captain him anyway because of the lack of minutes. So what's the worst that can happen? A Salah hat trick against Everton? It could happen, but like I don't know. I just don't think like maybe it is rogue. It is rogue. It's definitely very rogue.
I won't captain him. I was close to doing it. I'm not going to captain him. I'm going to captain Salah, but I'm certainly going to bring him in.
You know, you might have convinced me because I need a Rodrigo replacement, and maybe
the only problem I have with Leeds is obviously Rodrigo was the one essentially scoring the goals, right? So I just wonder how they're going to do without him. And I think the one thing people are maybe being slightly short-sighted with is Leeds are obviously a decent team, but they're not one of the best teams in the league, right? And maybe they started the season off hot, but I wouldn't be surprised to see somewhat of a decline. So that's why I'm kind of maybe avoiding him. One thing we did miss, though, what I missed really was that Jack Harrison, when we were talking about their replacements, and he was quite unlikely not to return against Everton out of all of them. So that's just something to point out.
Very good. Well, look, I can only apologise to everyone who had to deal with the technical issues, and thank you, Jim, for dealing with it, because I swear I nearly had a banger. It was like I've done hundreds of streams, and it was the first time that's ever happened. It was telling me I was live, but I wasn't live. So, don't know. There'll be tests done tomorrow, and I will be live on time, 10 p.m. tomorrow night, with Big Man Bakar to look ahead at my transfers, what he's up to, and a sort of preview of next week. Jane, lovely to have you here. People can find you on Twitter. They can find me on Twitter. Everyone, best of luck, and I hope you had great game weeks.
It was an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you, and thanks to all the viewers. If you want to interact with me on Twitter, by all means, come over. And if you want to listen to Micah and me talk pre-deadline, then come to the space.
Good stuff.
Which will be on Fantasy Football Hub.
At Fantasy Football Hub, at FFH_HQ, I think it is. Check that out for the spaces. Okay, guys, have a great night. Thanks for being here, and thanks for dealing with